Today, we revisit a caller from the past, Chris Ford, who was a service manager, now is something else. We answer his riddle. Also, we create a ringtone that you can download, and we cover all the important measurables that you should know in your department. That and more coming up on Service Drive Revolution. Hey, Christian, I got a surprise for you.
Really? What is it?
Remember the guy that called with the riddle that if you walked up a hill and then you dunked yourself in the water and then your effective labor rate was poisoned by pickles and you ate cheesecake, what would your efficiency be?
How did you memorize that whole thing?
Remember that guy?
Yeah, for sure.
Noah located him and we're going to talk to him right now. Are you ready?
I'm so
Do you know
ready.
the answer?
No.
So we'd like to welcome Mr. Chris Ford to the show. How are you doing, Chris?
Doing great, Chris.
Nice beard there.
Hey, you know what? It's not as good as yours, but I like it.
So Mr. Ford called in a question on the hotline, the 8333 Ask SDR, and asked a question. And I think you said you're a service manager from a Honda dealership, right?
Well, I was,
When
yes.
you called in, that was a little disguise.
Well, no, I was one, yes.
You were one? Okay, so you want to repeat the question, or do you want me to? Because we've made your question into a ringtone.
You said you were going
to. You want to
to
repeat it, or you want me to play you the ringtone?
You can play it.
It's pretty catchy.
I hope you can hear this.
If my average technician cost is $21 an hour and my weighted cost is $22.60, and I give a raise that is equal to an average of $1.25, which brings my new average cost to $22.25, and my weighted cost to $23.85, how much does my effective rate need to go up to retire at a $1.25 increase in cost and still hold 77% gross profit?
So that's my new ringtone on my phone.
That's awesome.
So now I honestly did, Chris, when I heard that, I thought there's no way that he's a service manager. I thought he has to be a consultant because it's totally a consultant question. Ends up, you are a consultant, right? So you have a company, Advanced Auto Service Training. Is that the company? Because that is what consultants would ask, that question. Now, you were telling me in the pre-interview that it was actually a client that posed that to you, right?
That is correct.
And so was he testing you, or like, what's the purpose? What the fuck is the purpose of that question? Except to show off and be a consultant. What would be the purpose?
So I think his goal was to see if I was worthy of assisting his team, which his managers, I don't think any of them, I think he has 12 or 13 stores. I don't think any of them had the answer to it. Okay. Not something that would typically be asked of most service managers, as you said, but he sent that out just asking, hey, if I have this, what is this? And, I looked through it, I read over it, I did some numbers, and I didn't know if I was coming up with the right answer or not. And that's honestly the reason I called into the show.
Oh, because you were thinking like Christian or I would know the answer to that right off the top of our head?
Well, yeah.
I want to lower your expectations dramatically.
There was no chance, Chris. Sorry.
Not only, well, I don't know. I'm sure I could figure it out, but I would never try to figure it out. I don't understand the purpose of it. What is the purpose of the question? So I think I have the spreadsheet you sent Noah, right?
Correct.
And so the answer is 128.79?
Correct. So that sheet would show you your required overall effective labor rate, breaking it down if obviously, as you see there, the $123 ELR, and then breaking it down the way that we were talking about. And I know that you said that you didn't quite understand why the question was put out there, but I think it's probably a pretty valid question if you're wanting to give a technician a raise. So a lot of service managers just think, oh, well, this guy finished whatever brand it is, Honda. He finished all of his Honda training. So he's now considered a master. We're going to give him $4. Well, how does that impact the effective labor rate, and how do you retire that or recoup it and maintain your cost, your current effective labor rate. How do you keep that? And that's what the formula breaks down for you.
Yeah, I think the be all end all on it is how do you give technicians a raise and still move your effective labor rate enough to keep the gross margin that you had before? Am I right, Chris?
That is correct. Because if you don't, then you give a tech a raise, you're still charging the same door rate, you're losing money. So how do you compensate for that? That's technically the whole question is, instead of a service manager saying, yes, let's give him an extra $2 because Johnny's going to go down the road, so I'll throw money at him. Well, what's it really costing you to do that?
So what does it say about me that I don't think about it that way?
I don't know. You tell me.
Way to answer a question with a question, consultant.
No, so let me explain this. When I was running the second largest Honda dealership in the country, Curry Honda in Chamblee, Georgia. Okay. I had 62 technicians, 18 service advisors, my parts, department, plus my support staff, with NBDC. And I was the only manager. I was the only, everything came to me. I was that sprocket, so to speak, or the hub. And when I would give raises there, it didn't really occur to me how much I was giving up by not raising the labor pricing or structuring it to make sure that we maintained, our current gross profit percentages, because we were printing money. I mean, we were doing 1.2 million a month in fixed, 650,000 in just labor gross every month. So when you're making huge numbers like that, it's easier to cover up when you give somebody a couple dollar raise here, a couple dollar raise there. But when you go to a little store in South Georgia that has 2 advisors and 6 technicians and nobody coming through the door these days wanting to be a technician, and Johnny says, hey, I'm going to go down the road to Firestone because they guaranteed me 40 hours and a salary or whatever. If you give them that raise that, we all would, because we can't afford to lose technicians, right? Most people, how does it affect you? And how do you retire that cost that you give him? And I think a lot of people don't think about that, Chris. And that's something that, as a consultant, obviously, as an owner, I'd want my management team to have my best interest in, obviously in mind, but how they're going to make up for it. So that was asked to me. Okay, you want to give, your shop foreman an extra $2 an hour for what the shop turns. How are you going to make it up?
Yeah. So, okay. So there's a couple things to that though. So what would you say, Chris, are the most important measurables in fixed?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously your gross and your effective labor production. I mean, there's a lot of measurables that I look at daily when I'm running a store, but your effective labor rate, maintaining that, and maintaining your shop hours, obviously all of that's going to go hand in hand.
Okay, so there's really 2 important measurables. So this is where I hate being labeled a consultant, because it's way simpler than that. The 2 most important measurables are net fixed absorption and customer retention. Those are the 2 most important measurables. Most of the time when I come in behind consultants and I ask for a financial statement, nobody's looked at a financial statement in 5 years. They say, get more gross, get more gross. In every 20 group I've spoken at in the last 5 years, and the moderators tell me all the time too, is these dealers say, get more gross, and the managers outspend the gross increase in expenses by discounting and trying to drive traffic and chasing traffic, and getting more gross implies getting more traffic, and it's a chase to the bottom, and it's an end-sum game. So what I want managers to do is focus on net and fixed absorption. Now, part of that is the effective labor rate, your gross profit percentage, your expenses, your personnel expense, and all that. Now, when I'm looking at this equation, the reason why I would never think this way is because this is confusing, and I'm wondering, since you understand this, and I'm looking at this and my ADD kicks in, where does it take into account how many technicians are in the shop?
Well, it doesn't.
Yeah, so that's the problem, is if I got 12 techs, I don't need to raise my effective labor rate by anything by giving one guy 4. Also, the idea here that the gross profit percentage is 78, I want it to be over 80. So I can get, with our pricing strategies and the way we set things up, we shoot for 80% on that. But giving one tech $4 is not going to affect that. It's going to affect it very little. And, with what we do, we can get any effective labor rate we want. And so I just feel like it's something to make service man. It's like, one of my least favorite conversations, Chris, that consultants have trapped me at bars, at conventions and stuff talking about, and I literally want to shoot myself in the face. Could you guess?
Shoot yourself in the back of the face. What is it?
Proficiency.
Oh God, you get into proficiency, efficiency, productivity. Yes.
Listen, you're either on an 8-hour day or a 10-hour day. What did they flag? 8 hours, 7 hours, 6 hours? I don't there's so many times I come into these dealerships that are in 20 groups. They're paying the advisors on gross. They're losing money. The managers are chasing traffic in gross, and the techs are bonused on proficiency. And there's a consultant that just left the building and now I've been brought in. And the technicians can manage proficiency all day long and not be efficient. And if you're working an 8-hour day, could you flag 8 hours in 1 minute?
Yeah.
And the other thing is the quick lubes, right? So most of the time the techs on the quick lube are running at 40 or 50% efficient. So how do we get them out of a quick lube in a situation where they can be 80, 90, sometimes we've had it where they're 100, but that's hard to do and requires a really good leader in that department. But that's why I think this is so funny, honestly, is that it really does nothing. I mean, do you think Rob would ever listen to this so I can tell him, Rob, this is a waste of time? And it doesn't even account for how many techs. If you have 12 techs, it's going to be like 20 cents or something?
33.
30. God, you're good with the math.
He's
lately.
good with the math.
Christian lately has been certain things he's been doing. He's like, oh, that's 33%. Oh, that's it's because he used to be a desk manager. And so he was a desk manager when you had to do leases by hand, where you had rocks on a string, and that's how you figured out your lease payment. So what were those things called that were calculators in the mid?
The abacus.
Yeah, he did lease payments with an abacus.
Right. And I still had to do Foursquare.
Chris, where's your bourbon?
My what?
Your bourbon.
What do you mean my bourbon?
Where's your bourbon at?
Well, I drink tequila.
Oh, I thought you drank bourbon.
You think that because I smoke cigars, but I have tequila that goes really good with cigars. Most people don't think tequila and cigars, but I'm a tequila guy.
Okay, I'm a bourbon guy.
And actually, I want to send you a bottle of tequila. Do you smoke cigars?
I don't. Never picked it up. Sometimes I feel like I should walk out back and sit back and have a cigar and a bourbon, but I haven't ever done it.
Oh, well, if I ever come your way or you come this way, we should have a cigar. Now, I would like to propose something, Chris, is I would love if you came up with an equation like this and we put it up and I'll come up with the prize and we'll give our listeners a prize to solve the riddle.
Okay.
But it's got to be different than this one.
Yeah, what do you want me to do?
It's got to be something really consulting-y. It's got to involve proficiency, dominoes. No, I'm joking. But something like really complicated that would, somebody would have to do kind of what I think you did here to answer this question. You built an Excel formula, right? Because you had to take it one by one.
I did it in my head. I just guessed.
It works really well.
And part of, the self-deprecation of us making fun of consultants, but also having a little fun, because there are a lot of people listening to this that love these sort of problems. Like Christian would love this. He would love a challenge like this. So if you can think of one, we'd love to have you do that.
I think he gave up after writing down numbers yesterday, listening to the call or whenever it was. He was like, I stopped writing numbers.
Yeah, we got it like about 30 seconds into it.
I just wanted to meet you after it.
And
Like,
we
I
both
just thought it
looked
was
at each
funny.
other like, oh my goodness, that is.
What? Yeah. Isn't it funny though? Like, we got to go back to this Rob guy. His formula is wrong.
I'm just telling you what he sent us and what we worked up. And
Listen, Mr. Ford, just because he's a dealer doesn't mean he knows what he's doing.
why do you think I sent the question to you?
He doesn't know what he's doing.
I don't take everything at face value, but I sent the question to you to see what you guys thought about it.
I'm surprised you didn't catch that. That's something you would catch. That the formula is wrong because it doesn't take into account how many techs we have in the shop.
So the question, actually, when he asked it, was that if you gave everybody in the shop a $1.25 raise. Am I pretty close?
Oh, so then that would
So
cover
he
it.
was actually talking about a raise for the whole shop. in
My
that
bad
particular
then.
one.
I stand corrected. Okay.
But normally, if you're talking about, because you don't give the whole shop a raise at one time, typically, right? Like you do it one at a time. But I do believe that the actual question was about giving the whole shop a raise.
Well, I think the most important measurable is net to gross and CSI retention, who's coming back, and then we work backwards from there, you know. But a lot of service managers are just taught, get me gross, get me, you know, are we gonna hit 400 in gross? And it's like, has no relativity to the net.
You have said it, I believe, in your episodes, and if not, I certainly have heard it several times. Most of the dealers, they take their, which happened with me, by the way, they take their top performer and they shoot them in and say, no, go be the service manager and make everybody do what you do. And that's literally what happened to me. Adam Zuckerman, great guy, loved the guy to death. I was a shining star making well over $150,000 a year at a Honda store as an advisor, collecting customers, building my rapport, really showing people that I cared. They, as you guys have said, you got key tossers, just come in. What do you need done? I don't know. Call me when you figure it out. And I loved doing what I did. I really, really did. And I thought, well, I want to try my hand at teaching these other advisors and showing them, what I've done to make me successful and build them. And, when we started, when I took over, we had 6 advisors and 21 technicians, which was a big store. Well, then we grew in the 5 years to 18 advisors and 62 technicians, had to build a whole new store, $12.5 million project to do that, to accommodate the growth that we had in that area. And you lose focus on where you really started at that point of growing people. And I spent 8 years in the Army as a drill sergeant, and breaking somebody down and building them back up to be successful is not something you just take a productive service advisor, throw them into that role and expect them to do. They actually have to have that ability. And a lot of dealers that do that are setting not only themselves up, but their customers and that manager and their team up for failure. And that's where I think, if we had and I've been through NADA, I've been through fixed ops with them, and, great guys and a lot of good information. But I think if we had people that really, really cared doing this and showing people, because I don't need the money. I love doing it to help other people and see that look in their eyes when they succeed and come back 2 years later, which I'm sure you guys have had many times over. Hey, Chris, thanks for showing me this. And let me tell you what I did. This one time you told me this and I did it. And I'll tell you, I've done it ever since. Those kind of things are what make me love doing what I do. Unfortunately, and I use this a lot, you said that nobody breaks out the statement, don't look at it. That was daily. Every single day I'm pulling a statement, looking at it. And something that I use when I go into stores and try to talk with the GMs, most time they want to blow you off, as you know. There's a line on that statement for training. Are we going to use it, or are we going to let the GMs abuse it? Because we know that they're going to put stuff there, whatever, maybe their golf game or something's going to go on the training category, and they just don't actually use it for training. And I think it's one of the most bastardized things that in the department, you got the most people coming through the service department with your least trained people. How do we fix that? And that's what I'm here wanting to do, on a very small scale, being one person. I work day in, day out, going to these stores and talking with people, and half the managers and the GMs don't want to give you time to, even even say, hey, nevertheless, let you put a brochure in their hand and show them how you can help them make more money, and their employees happier because they're making more money, obviously. It's just a domino effect, as you said earlier, dominoes in it. That's true. So through the years, I want to tell you, I've appreciated watching your videos. I've got your book. I've done a lot of research and spent a lot of time listening to you, and I just appreciate you. I want you to know that. So.
Oh, that means a lot, and thank you. And yeah, let's do this together. Come up with a riddle, and we'll have a contest, and then you can judge them. It would be fun.
I think it'd be fun. I think it would.
There's a lot of smart guys out there, so make it tricky, and then when you come up with it, let us know, and we'll have you back on, and we'll put the challenge out there. Christian and I will think about what the prize will be. Well, I guess it would depend on how hard the riddle is.
Yeah.
To a varying degree.
It could be either a Chili's gift card or a PlayStation. Like you go anywhere in between there, Chris, but lean towards PlayStation.
Wait,
style.
How much is on the Chili's gift card?
$30. $32.74.
Well, that's barely a couple tequilas.
Right. They don't even have good tequila at Chili's.
Thanks, Chris, for coming on. Let us know when you come up with that riddle, okay?
Hey, I appreciate you guys, and I will. I'll send that over to Noah.
Thanks.
All right. See you guys.
So interestingly, this kind of feeds into a question we had. So Jesse from Maine called the number the 8333.
Ask SDR.
Good job. And he was asking about what are the important measurables, right?
Yeah.
And so I talked about on our call there with Mr. Ford that net to gross is probably the most important. And so I was trying to think of an analogy for our audience to understand. So imagine, Christian, if I said, will you make me dinner?
Yes.
And so you make me dinner. So I don't know. I come over to your place, you come over to my place, but when you get there, there's 100 people. And you thought you were just making me dinner.
Planning for one. Yeah.
So when we talk about you preparing dinner, an important question might be how many people.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about the important measurables, the most important place to start is what are we making or losing in most cases, right? So what is our profitability? Because, and I had this conversation with somebody on a strategy session a couple days ago. They were like, well, my effective labor rate, I want it to be 95. Oh, you were on that call.
I sure was.
95. And I'm like, well, how did you come up with 95? And then they I forget what the answer was.
Yeah, there was a lot of reasons why 95 was the right number for him, but none of them necessarily were valid. He also didn't answer that question honestly.
Meanwhile, the whole time I'm looking and he's losing money.
Yeah.
And so that's the problem when you're not focused on net to gross is you don't know what your effective labor rate should be. You don't know what your personnel as a percentage of gross should be. None of that makes any sense until you know what we're making or losing.
Yeah.
Making or not making, right? So the most important measurable is what is our net to gross? Now the formula for net to gross is taking your profit, your net profit, and dividing it into your gross profit. So if you made $10,000 in profit and you had $100,000 in gross, what would be your net to gross?
If you had what?
$10,000 in profit.
We have 10,000. We didn't lose money?
And $100,000 in gross.
I believe that our net to gross would be 10%.
You are correct.
I threw you for a loop.
What if we made 20,000 in profit and our gross was 100,000?
20% net to gross.
There you go. So that's the first thing I look at, and then I look at retention, depending on the brand, retention, CSI, that sort of thing. Then I would go and I would look at the ELR next. That's the next thing I would look at.
Yep.
I would look at RO count. So when you talk about ELR, what is the formula for ELR? And ELR stands for effective labor rate. You were making the point, a lot of people don't even know how to calculate ELR, let alone what it should be.
Right. So I spend a good portion of my life asking people if they know what ELR means, right?
Like randomly on the street?
Yeah, just going down. The mime on Figueroa does a really good job with it, actually. But
What is this, 1982, that there's mimes?
yeah, it's good, right? So the thing that I know when I ask somebody about effective labor rate, if it takes them more than 7 words to describe effective labor rate, they do not know what it is.
So how do people describe effective labor rate?
Oh, they'll throw in like tech cost and gross profit and like all these other formulas into it. They're like, okay, so effective labor rate, I know I should know it, but I really just rely on the report from the DMS. But effective labor rate is my sales minus my tech cost times my days out minus pi. But really,
Squared.
Yeah, but really all it is it's labor sales divided by labor hours sold.
Yeah. So it's your labor dollars divided by hours flagged in the shop.
That's it. Keep it simple.
Yeah. Okay. So that would be the next place I would go.
Me too.
Right? Then I would look at our gross profit percentage.
Okay.
So gross profit percentage, this is another one that is misunderstood. Gross profit percentage is your effective labor rate less your cost of technician gives you your gross. So the difference between gross and sales is the cost of the technician, the direct cost.
Well said.
And that should, I know that NADA and different places say that should be 70%. Usually we're shooting for closer to 80.
Yeah, I think that we have like a little thing, right? So when we get closer to 80, if we go too far over, it means you've got some flexibility if you need to go out and recruit and pay a little bit more for better techs. Like the 80 is a magic number for sure.
Yeah. Then the next thing I would probably do is, because I know the net to gross, I know the expenses as a percentage of gross, right? Because there can only be 100%. So if we do $10,000 in profit and we have $100,000 in gross, what are our expenses?
90,000 would be my guess.
90%.
90% expenses percentage of gross.
So it's just whatever the difference is of 100, right? So if your net to gross is 20%, then you know your expenses are 80%. So that's another number I would look at as my expenses as a percentage of gross. And then I would dial in and I would say, what is my personnel? Now, usually the personnel should be, around 40 to 45, depending on the brand, of the gross. And then I'd dig in even further and see what are my advisors as a percentage of gross, right?
Another one with the expenses as a percentage of gross to be aware of, it gets tricky when you're losing money.
Yeah.
Sometimes that screws people up too, right? So if you lose $10,000 and you have a gross of 100,000, what is your expense as a percentage of gross?
Then the next two things I probably want to know is open ROs. That tells me a lot about what's going on. And so I'll just ask, randomly, hey, can I see an open repair order list? And then usually it's sorted by the date of the oldest one. And so I'm going to say the many times I've seen ROs open over a couple years, which is odd. But that right there kind of tells you what's going on. And it really is a good indicator of the leadership and the manager.
Yeah.
So let's say that I look at the open ROs and there's one that's 10 months old. Let's just be nice. There's a couple that are 10 months old or whatever. So then I will say, you pretend you're the service manager, and I'm going to pretend I'm Chris Collins.
All right.
Unless you want to flip.
No, you be Chris Collins this time.
So this RO from June of last year, Thompson, what's going on with that?
Yeah, so that is, we're waiting on...
just say you don't know.
Yeah, so So he went
My
to
favorite one
Europe.
there, my favorite answer there is, oh, that was the previous manager.
Oh, that's a good one too. I wish I would have thought of that. Dang it.
That was the previous manager. I'm like, well, it's not going to go away.
I would have been like, Thompson? Who's Thompson?
Okay, now how long should ROs be open?
I feel like as long as the car's here, and then it goes. So realistically, anything over.
Oh, bro, no, I've been in dealerships where the cars were there 2 years too.
Yeah, that's just not right. Like at a week,
It's crazy.
At a week, I get nervous.
Yeah, so 30 days is kind of like, alarm should be going off at 30 days.
Yeah.
But nothing, it's not like wine, it's not aging. Every day past 30 days, the chances of us collecting all the money just go down.
Yeah, we were saying that for a while, weren't we? Saying like milk, not wine.
Yeah, it's milk.
It spoils.
It's turning
it doesn't
into
get better.
to curds, stinky milk. It's not getting better. And it's not some rare Parmesan.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that. It's definitely an indicator of how tight the ship is run. That one report, the Open RO report, tells you so much.
Now, because I'm a glutton for punishment at this point, I still ask for this next thing, but I can tell by the Open ROs what the next thing I ask for is going to be. Like, I know, I have a sense. It's funny how these things like are very,
Can I guess what the next thing is? Or do you?
Sure.
Special order parts.
No.
Shoot.
But that would go hand in hand too, so that's a good guess.
Okay.
Receivables.
Yep.
And so I'm looking at the warranty receivables, fleet receivables, whatever the receivables are.
Bob on a handshake.
Now, in some situations, the ROs are pretty clean, but the receivables are a disaster. So a manager has learned how to close things out to an account, but nobody's collecting on that account.
Yeah.
And I've seen that where there's an account of over $1 million that will never collect ever. But the manager's really good at closing things to that at the end of the month.
Oh, that hurts.
So receivables tell you a lot too. So same sort of thing. You go to the receivables, nothing should be over 30 days there. A lot of manufacturers pay warranty pretty quick.
That's gotten a lot better over the years for sure.
So then the next thing I'm probably going to want to look at is shop efficiency. I don't care about proficiency. Could care less. Oftentimes I'll have to figure it out manually because they're doing some cockamamie thing.
Yeah.
And so like I said, if a tech works an 8-hour day, how many hours did he flag in that 8 hours? That's my version of efficiency. I know in truck they call that proficiency. And they're the opposite.
That's been a little bit of a challenge is to undo that when we're talking to them.
Yeah,
what do you
but
think?
I don't care. They understand in principle that an 8-hour day is an 8-hour day.
Yeah. Now, what do you think about overall shop capacity? How important is that to you when you've got 50 stalls but 40 techs?
In what sense?
In terms of thinking about your overall potential, does it matter to you that you've got more stalls than you have techs?
Okay, well, you do this all the time for a living. Ends up you do this for a living. If you go into a shop, and let's say your menu penetration is like 10%, right? So we're not recommending alignments. We're not recommending anything. Your hours per RO are low. What kind of brand do you want this to be?
Honda.
Honda. Okay, Honda store. They're at 0.8 hours per RO. And they're writing 1,000 customer pay tickets, and they sold 20 alignments last month. And they're booked out 2 days.
Yeah.
Okay? Whether they have 10 open stalls or not doesn't matter.
No, but I naturally want to fill them.
Yeah, but what if they have 25 techs and 25 stalls? What are you going to do?
Sell more alignments.
No, you're going to put the techs on 410s.
Yeah, and then
We can put 9 techs in 6 bays. So does it really matter? In an odd way, my answer to your question is I almost prefer that they don't have empty stalls because recruiting techs is going to be easier when I run the ad that says a 4-10 work week.
Yep.
I'm going to hire quicker. It's the nuclear bomb of hiring techs, right? So I almost prefer that we don't have shop capacity.
Okay.
Just in a sense, it doesn't really matter. Am I
Yeah.
answering your question?
You are, and it's just one of those things. When I walk into a shop, I multiply the amount of stalls times 8 hours, and that's what I always think about. It's like, what could we do?
Well, I'm doing that by looking at the efficiency.
Yeah, I think efficiency is a better indicator because that's really what you have the bodies to produce.
Yeah, but so the trick there is that let's say you go into a Honda store and they have 25 techs, 10 of those 25 techs are quick lube techs. The overall efficiency of those techs is 60%. What do you know instantly?
Well, I know that they're not doing anything other than oil changes. They're not upselling, so they're not converting anything.
Yeah, but you know that the efficiency of those quick lube techs is somewhere around 40% probably.
Yeah, so that means that the main shop techs are probably 80. Like they're probably not.
They're
even
probably
100.
80, which means that the quick lube is very inefficient. They're not creating work for the shop, and the shop is starving, and they're running them separately.
Yeah, so the inspections are probably really poor.
Yeah, and so now, how are you going to fix that efficiency?
Do lateral support and put quick lubes next to main shop techs, and then have everybody get better at inspections.
If you guys can hear that over my microphone, just a couple what kind of helicopters are those?
I don't know, but it was a big one, I think.
Military helicopters. They keep buzzing the building downtown LA. I'm still gonna have to hire techs, is my point.
Yeah. Okay.
Because those techs that are running at 80%, even though we're probably not giving them work, most of the time, you're not going to increase shop efficiency by 20% with the same techs you have. And I always go back to, it's the same mistake I made when I took over a sales department in a dealership, thinking that I could take the salespeople I had that averaged 5 cars a month and get them to 10.
It's not possible.
No, but I brought in a bunch of salespeople that averaged 20 and put in minimum requirements. And some of those guys that did 5 were doing 8 to save their jobs. But also, quite a few of them just went away and fired themselves. But it was in the recruiting of the guys who were doing 20 units a month that fixed my average. It's the same thing with Texas. I got to go out and get some guys that can run at 150%.
Yeah.
That are, just give me work. And also that I'm changing the culture in the shop too, right?
Yeah.
So efficiency is the next one that I would look at, and that's just what are we flagging, on average per tech per day. Then I would do the fixed absorption, that formula, which it's too complicated to go over on here, I think, without writing it down. But fixed absorption, and then I would look at the parts to labor ratio. Because the one thing that I know, and this is just kind of our style of fixing a service department, is I have to in some ways protect the parts department because we're going to sell so many alignments.
Yeah, we're going to go labor heavy.
And even when we're selling more tires, it's not going to give the parts department a lot of gross. Yeah. And so you got to figure out when you're doing your menu and your pricing how to kind of protect that parts to labor ratio, because many times I haven't paid attention to that and it gets way out of whack because we're selling so many alignments that the parts department, their ratio of parts to labor gets way out of whack.
Yeah. I think I've seen that before where it goes really, really
And the
labor
reason
heavy.
why that happens is because there's no parts on an alignment. Just if anybody's wondering. It's pure labor.
Yeah. It's funny how that works.
Do you think anybody was wondering that?
Maybe 2 people.
So I hope that helps. Jesse from Maine, what was your fun fact about Maine?
That I believe it is the 2nd highest moose population in the country.
And the first highest is Montana?
Alaska.
Not Montana.
No.
Huh. Where's Montana?
in the Northwest. I think
No,
they're number
where on
3.
the list?
Yeah, I was totally messing with you there. It's 3. You know, I didn't do a joke today yet.
Oh, do you have one? Because we're
course.
wrapping it up.
I know.
Let's end with the joke.
So, have you heard about this new pillow that's out?
No.
It's a corduroy pillow. It's making headlines everywhere. Thank you, helicopter.
That was pretty funny.
Thanks.
Well, that was fun, you guys. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you next time on Service Drive Revolution. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Service Drive Revolution. We're uploading new stuff every day, so make sure you subscribe and click the bell icon so you don't miss out. If you have a question you'd like us to answer on the show, call 8333-ASK-SDR and we'll answer your question on the show. That's 8333-ASK-SDR. For special deals on our books and training, head over to offers.chriscollinsinc.com. Now that's offers.chriscollinsinc.com. I'm Chris Collins, and I'll see you in the next video.